I got to see my life in 4K in front of me. It's already been written in the tapestry of the universe. We're just too blind sometimes to see it. And I realized my life can be taken just like that.
Hakim Tafari's life reads like a masterclass in continuous reinvention. A man difficult to define, Hak is a Buddhist Dharma practitioner. He is a master of mindfulness, movement, and meaning. He's a teacher and practitioner of meditation and Tai Chi and Kung Fu.
The Tai Chi is a mindful movement. The Qigong is a mindful movement. The running is a mindful movement. All these things are a way of showing you how to find true sense of liberation and inner freedom.
He's a mountaineer, he's an herbalist, he's a DJ, he's a runner, and a curator of culture, which is all a long way of saying that Hak is a seeker of wisdom. Wisdom he today shares in my friend's second appearance on the show, which is a deeply nourishing conversation exploring the beauty of suffering, the power of inviting discomfort into your life, and the potential that resides within all of us to transcend our circumstances and actively transform our lives wholesale.
I've surrendered to the fact that I want to live a certain lifestyle. To me, surrender is almost like a superpower. You have to break shit down. You have to dismount. You have to destroy old misnomers. I want to be my ancestors' wildest dreams. What are you trying to do? What does it look like for you?
Today's episode is brought to you by the awesome organizations that make this show possible. Good to see you, my friend. I'm so grateful to have you back here.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you too, man.
And thank you for this gift, this hand-painted. I mean, I've seen these symbols of
the circle.
But I don't know a lot about what they represent or what they're called or what this art form is of, painting these.
So
I should hold that up for people that don't know.
They're based upon a Zen Buddhist practice. They're called enzos. And it's, as I said, they're based upon a Zen Buddhist practice where the practitioner basically gets the brush and within one breath stroke creates the circle. And you end up making, whether it be 5, 6, a dozen, 100, but it's part of a meditation practice. And what you're doing is basically just breathing into the brush, and the brush becomes your kind of stroke, becomes your weapon of choice.
And everyone is unique, of course.
And everyone is unique.
But the circle's never quite complete. It always ends right before you complete the circle. What is the idea behind that?
I think every Enzo artist is different. You have some that are fully complete, and then you have some which is like you do that breath and it's like a quick whisk, and you see that brush stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, everyone is different. I think it represents the completeness and the incompleteness of life. There's a fullness and a void that encapsulates the Enzo. So every artist is different, the way they paint their Enzos. Sometimes I might be in a mood where I want to do the full stroke and the full circle. And then there's times when I'm like, no, let me just do a little whisk and cut that end off. So everyone is different. Yeah, everyone is different.
And the reflection that I'm supposed to have when I gaze into this on my wall or on my meditation altar.
I'm hoping that it brings you peace and calmness. When you look at that, you can see the beauty in your own life.
That's a tough one for me sometimes. The critic is loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it can be. But I think, one of the things that I've been really playing with and really enjoying is surrendering. That concept of surrendering. And it was something that for many years, it was tough for me to do. And as I've gotten older and as I've learned to soften my heart, I've really learned how to surrender. As you talk about that and you're like, yeah, I don't know if I can do that. How much of it is you not surrendering?
Oh, most of it, all of it, probably, right?
Yeah.
And whatever part isn't about that could probably be solved through a deeper form of surrender. Because if you're truly letting go, then there's no space for that cackle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But liberation is hard. It's a fucking beast, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
So when you say you're focusing on surrender, what is the brass tacks of that practice?
The aspect of letting go, the aspect of dismantling old habits. For me, I've really worked hard in these last few years on really letting go and dismantling and just getting rid of what doesn't service me. And surrendering is that. What is not servicing you, you got to let it go. And I think I go through modes where I'm just like, I need to get rid of this. I need to get rid of that, whether it be physically or mentally or spiritually. And it's becoming part of my muscle memory now because I'm realizing that it's lightening up my load in so many ways that I could even possibly imagine. It's lightening up my load and it's making things a lot more easier and clearer for me. The more I can let go, the more. And I said this in the last time we were here, holding that backpack and just being able to let go. But it's really true. And in that surrender, I think for so many of us, and especially for men, there's a kind of, they equate surrendering with weakness. And to me, surrender is almost like a superpower. It takes a lot.
It's also an act of courage because it's forcing you to confront yourself in an honest way and make peace with the fact that you're not the all-powerful, in-control being that you would like to believe that you are, right? You have to disabuse yourself of that delusion.
Yeah.
And that's very threatening to the ego, and it requires courage. So it's actually the antithesis of weakness. Weakness is going about your way and never turning the gaze inward to deconstruct that illusion.
Yeah.
But it's a leap. It's a leap for a lot of people. If you tell somebody the solution to your problem is to let go, that immediately gets interpreted as waving the flag of defeat. When all of our instincts and every kind of input over the course of our lives is telling us to like push. And if you're strong enough or you can summon the will, you'll be able to solve the problem that way. And that's the gift of, having experienced a life crisis, be it existential or with substances or some form of addiction, is that you're forced to confront that. And then you kind of find your way to the other side and realize the power of surrender and how it's very different than what you might imagine, imagined it to be.
For sure. And, one of which for me was a big one, was alcohol. That was a big one. I think I'm going on maybe 2.5 years now where I haven't touched it. And that was a big one for me because I would somewhat lean on it once I realized that I didn't need alcohol in my life anymore and just got rid of it, things started becoming a lot more clearer for me. And I know it sounds cliche and a lot of people are like, oh my God, I got rid of alcohol and I got rid of drugs and it became more mystical and clear. But something did essentially happen for me when I gave up alcohol. And then being in establishments and being in areas where I saw my friends drinking and seeing what they were doing when they drank too much or how they would act, and being in those environments, that in itself was a game changer for me in letting go, in surrendering, because I had to surrender a certain type of lifestyle that I was used to for so many years, and certain people that I was used to for certain years, and letting that go. And then, just other little things in my life and facets where I was just like, that's not servicing me anymore. This is not servicing me anymore.
What's interesting about that is that this decision to give up alcohol came in the aftermath of many years of spiritual practice and deep connection with ideas like surrender and being present and all of that. For most people, giving up alcohol is their introduction to these ideas, which are new and foreign. But you're somebody who is, pretty expert in all of that, and yet alcohol confronted you with a new level of what that might mean. That's interesting.
I think I was towing the line. I've never been somebody who is extreme with alcohol, but I think during the pandemic and things that were going on through the pandemic, and keep in mind, I was still somewhat working during the pandemic too. I was still working a 9 to 5. So there was that stuff that was going on with my family. I would look at it as me being like, yeah, well, I'm becoming a connoisseur of Japanese whiskey, and I like that one, so I'm just going to keep on. And I would use that as an excuse to be, let me try out this one tonight. Let me try out this one tonight. And I realized that I was drinking more, almost using that more so than my own meditation practice. And I don't know what it was, but something one day woke me up, and I was like, what are you getting from this? What are you really honestly getting from this? And as you said, I meditate. I do Vipassanas. If there's anyone who should know about this, it should be me. But still, I'm still kind of leaning that on a crutch. And then one day I woke up and I was like, yeah, I should know better. I do know better.
Well, this, in a nutshell, is the good news and the bad news about pursuing a spiritual path, is it not, right? Because on the one hand, you can't buy into your own bullshit anymore. Once you've progressed to a certain point, you're able to see through your own nonsense, and you have this compulsion to call yourself on it, right? That's the engine of growth, of course. But that means that you have to keep giving up things that you like to do. I mean, listen, we all have things that we rely upon to distract ourselves from whatever it is we don't want to feel in whatever moment we find ourselves in. And it can be the phone, it can be alcohol, it can be anything, right? But for someone like yourself who is, mature on their spiritual path, I'm sure you're like, when you encounter a dissonance, I mean, there's always another layer to peel, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be peeling that onion until you die.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're like, really? I have to give this up too? I've already done this, and this. Like, don't I get to graduate? Like, can I coast for a little bit? Just like 5 minutes?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yeah. I consider myself a householder, but I still have those monk-type qualities. And for me, it's just following that middle path, man, knowing how to keep things in balance. Really just knowing how to keep things in balance. And I knew that what I was doing with the alcohol was definitely, the balance wasn't there. With the running and the mindfulness and everything else. And then finding myself leaning to this whiskey or that whiskey just to soothe my whatever was going on. Yeah, I realized when you get to a certain point, there's this thing called the Eightfold Path that most Buddhists really succumb to. And they say that, within the wheel, there's 8 spokes. And the minute that you take one of those spokes out, the wheel becomes
unstable.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a certain thing within the Eightfold Path, which is sila, moral conduct. And alcohol is part of that. And I looked at that And I just, as I said, for me, seeing folks around me, especially in run crew culture too, like alcohol is prevalent. You start seeing folks doing things, after a 26-mile race or a 50-mile race or 100, and the alcohol starts coming, and then you just start seeing folks doing shit that, why are you doing that? Why are you? And I started seeing a lot of this happen around with a lot of friends, associates, acquaintances, and stuff like that. And I just, for myself, there's a moral conduct, there's a moral compass I have in my own self. And, coming to this level where I'm 50 now, the way I move and navigate through life really means something to me. And again, where surrendering comes in, I've surrendered to the fact that I want to live a certain lifestyle. I want to live a very simple, peaceful life with my partner. I get to do what I need to do. I get to run. I get to paint. I get to play music. I want to live a very simple life. So again, what is not servicing me, I'm going to put that away. And I think for me, this has really been the big thing for me, especially turning 50. Like, coming into my 50 was like the biggest epiphany. Like, if I really want to train like a superhero, if I really want to bring my mindfulness to a sharper key and to a sharper level, then there are things that I need to get rid of.
Mm.
There are things that are not going to service me. And there are things that I need to build on that are going to service me into making me a better person.
Before the podcast, I was asking you about your run crew activities, and you told me that you've kind of stepped back from that world for a bit, which is interesting because you're like the run crew dude. You're like the curator of running culture, bombing the streets with giant groups of people. And I think on some level, the reason why you've taken a step back is not unrelated to what you just shared. Not the drinking part, but more the inner reflective part. And also this idea, you were sharing a little bit about how subcultures can create identities that then become an impediment to the growth that awaits, right? So the thing that was the accelerator of your growth has a shelf life, right? Before it's kind of time to step up and reimagine yourself once again. And you see people who kind of get stuck because they've had such a positive experience and it has helped them in positive ways. But then it becomes a barrier, like you stay there because you're affirmed and that's your community. And there's a lot of good things about that. I'm not disparaging that in any way, but I think it then becomes incumbent for somebody who is so committed to a spiritual path and this trajectory of growth that you then have to extract yourself out of that or run the risk of doing that very thing, which is getting stuck.
I mean, and it was so funny because I didn't really think about it in its totality until you just made it in 4K, until you just showed it to me. And I think it has a big time aspect to why I may not be as deep in that culture as I was before. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I was several years ago, 8:30, 9 o'clock, I was running the streets, and it was like, I wasn't getting home till like 10:30, 11 o'clock, not going to bed till 1 o'clock. I'm watching Marvel superhero cartoons at 9 o'clock at night. I'm watching old reruns of stuff with my girl and our kid. That's what I'm doing. I don't, that life is not for me anymore. Will I go out and do it every now and again? Yeah. But I think for me, there was something great about, I found family in run crew culture. Something that was really, I didn't have that coming up in my formative years. Feeling like I had a family, feeling like I had that people who had my back and the best interest and so forth. And you said something that was really key. I've seen individuals in run crew culture, that's all they know. That's all they do. is run marathons, be about that culture, showing up in Berlin, showing up in New York, showing up in Tokyo, being of this caliber. I got to run, the sub 3, or I've got to run, sub 3:30. I got to show my face in Boston, yada, yada. And I'm not disparaging I love run crew culture. Run crew culture is what made me. Some of my best friends and family are in run crew culture. But I think there is a maturation, there is a metamorphosis, and there's an evolution. And I think you're seeing a lot of folks who came from road running now moving really deeply in the trails, because there's no, you have to be at this time. There's no, you've got to look a certain way. You got to be in this super shoe or that super shoe. You go on the trail is going to humble you. The trail is going to show you the way. And especially with the rise and really the beautiful aspect of plant medicine and being able to explore microdosing and going into the wilderness and really being in nature and being in that. I think there's something very beautiful and ethereal and spiritual about that. And I think that more folks now are leaning more towards that, because there's a lot less judgment. There's a lot more playfulness in the trail.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more finding yourself and insights in the trail. Not to say that you're not going to find insights when you're running, 24, 30 miles on the street, but there's a difference in that when you're in the trail, you're in the mountain. And that was one of the things that I learned when I went to Oaxaca and Chiapas all those years back, running through Jackson Hole, even running here, running in Malibu, or, running Kenneth Hahn. There is something very mystical. And, I use this word a lot when I have these very intense spiritual things, but auspicious. And not to sidetrack, but, I had the pleasure of taking some young kids into the mountains early this year, city kids who have never really been into the mountains. And for these young Black and brown kids to go up and hike these mountains and to see just the whole of LA and to see, Dodger Stadium, to see Pasadena, the mountains of Pasadena, and to see their faces, it just it made my heart smile, because these are kids that are used to the block. These are kids that are used to, whatever gangs are active in their areas. They're not used to seeing sights like this. So again, while road running is cool and road running is great, I think there's so much more of the world to see out there. And really, I think that you're seeing a lot of folks kind of moving from that and moving into ultras and moving into going in the trails, because there's such a playfulness, a way to feel that liberation and not get judged for a certain time or looking a certain way. Again, I love run crew culture.
Yeah, I get it. I think the human animal will find a way to trap itself no matter what. So the quest to run sub 3 in the marathon gets replaced with the trail version, which is, well, I'm going to do a 50K and now I'm going to do a 50 mile, and now I'm going to do a 100 mile, and now I'm going to get it. Yeah. So it's like, you can find that in anything, but I think your point remains true, which is in nature, you are liberating yourself from a lot of those kind of etiquette-driven metrics and kind of expectations that come with like road running culture. And obviously like nature is going to deliver a different kind of frequency in terms of that's going to, kind of maybe open you up in a new and unique way. And I love that you took those kids up there. While you were sharing that story, I was thinking about Tom Shadyac, who was in here the other week, the filmmaker who moved to Memphis and opened Memphis Rocks. And
yes.
I've had the occasion to meet some of the kids that he and that community have introduced to the outdoors. And, some of these young people have gone on to, go on pretty serious expeditions to, very big mountains. And and the life-changing, kind of opportunity that is giving, to kids who live in the poorest zip code in America, basically.
I was just at the Outside Festival, and I so happened to be with this guy named Malik the Martian. Malik is a filmmaker who came out of Memphis, and he was part of the Black Ice. I think he was one of the moving parts of Black Ice. And for anybody who doesn't know...
I know. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Go ahead, though.
So Black Ice is a story of basically these folks from Memphis who team up with North Face, and they learn how to climb ice. And a lot of these folks come from the inner cities of Memphis. And, I got to hear Malik's story. And Malik is very close to one of our mutual friends, Conrad, Conrad Anker and Jimmy Chin. He's had a lot of experience with Conrad going on some of these really wild, crazy adventures. Yeah. And Conrad, Malik made the remark, Conrad would just say, just don't die. Just don't die. But something very similar he said to me when we went on the summit. When I hear Malik's story, when he's talking about, he came up, in home crack addict homes, seeing friends shoot, having friends who just had their younger brother or sister shot, being in these environments, not knowing whether you're going to make it the next day, to then being in the wilderness and seeing a war for the first time. How impactful that is. Even myself, I think about, I really, I was very scared of going into the outside space because I didn't really feel like it was really for me. And, being in Oaxaca, being in Chiapas really changed my life. Being in Zapatista, held, rainforest encampments and running through those trails was something very mystic to me, but was so liberating because I had never seen anything like that before. And I didn't think that I was allowed to be in spaces like that. So, when you hear stories of Memphis rocks and the stuff that Conrad and homie from Free Solo, Alex. Yeah.
Donald.
So Alex is always there in Memphis. Just to see the stuff that they're doing with kids that have never seen, a boulder, let alone how to boulder, and climbing ice is really just, again, I think it just gives you a perspective. It gives you just a real perspective on life and the privilege that some of us have.
Are you still part of that North Face Council?
Explorer Fund Council?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still in the mix. I still, Outside Festival was a reunion. So there was a lot of us like Jody Potts and Dr. Ray, Wayne Grant, some of those folks. We're not doing anything big in particular like we did, 2-3 years ago. But a lot of us are doing our own work and just really channeling and really getting, the word out that we out here and that we're, trying to make a change. I just met an organization out of San Francisco called Negus in Nature. And then my friend Ron Griswold has HBCU Outside. There's so many amazing grassroots, Black, Brown, Indigenous groups that are pushing to get folks into climbing, into kayaking, into seeing the outdoors in a way that we've never seen before. Because I think folks really want it now. They want to come out of the city. They want to come and they want to see what life is all about. Some folks have never experienced camping. Some folks have never experienced, roasting a marshmallow on an open fire, So I think it's just, we're seeing a new identity now. We're seeing, I wouldn't say it's a shift, but I just think culturally now, folks are not scared to go out there.
I bet there's a lot of you out there who've been pondering that new website you'd like to have, but just haven't pulled the trigger. Well, with Squarespace, it's easy and affordable to build your own beautiful designer website. So Squarespace has been a long-time partner of the show, and what I love about it is it just demystifies everything about what's required to make a website. You don't need to be a designer. You don't need to know how to code. Everything is right at your fingertips. They make it super simple, and they've got these unbelievably beautiful templates to choose from that are oriented around whatever your needs may be. Whether you need a simple landing page or a full-on online shop, Snap, Crackle, Pop, Squarespace has the tools you need to launch your business, including e-commerce templates and inventory management. So make that website. You got it. Click the link in the description below for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code RichRoll to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. When you were with that community in Chiapas and you were running the mountains, was that your first sort of experience with this fusion between spirituality and running and mindfulness? Like, what was the light bulb moment about that community?
You know, me and the folks of Air Libre, we were so enamored with each other and loved what we were doing that we were like, we got to do something together. We got to bring this spirituality and bring it into the mountains and bring these folks. And, you know, we'll make it. We'll plan the routes. We'll make sure that you folks feel safe enough to run these routes that we have designed. So it was the first time I'd ever really gone out the country and done anything that, you know, being in remote areas where there wasn't, you know, Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But I was open to the idea because I knew it was going to be life-changing and I knew it was going to take me out of my comfort zone. And doing that and being with folks, let me tell you about the second day, Rich, when I went into districts that have never seen a Black person before. These certain places in Chiapas that have never seen the likes of me before. And I'm looking at them like they're wearing these Sherpa-style jackets and rich textiles. And there were different townships that had different ways of how they perceived their cultures. It was at a time where it was like St. Michael. There was a big St. Michael festival. And all these different townships had something going on. So imagine there's a group of 12 foreigners. I can't remember how many Black bodies, but it was this, you know, you could tell we weren't all from Chiapas. We weren't all from Mexico. And these folks, I didn't feel worried, not one bit. And I remember having one of our guides, I can't remember our guide's name, but he would run us through these areas and these trails that were so beautiful and so mystic and smells that I had never smelled before. At that point, especially running up the volcano, we ran up a volcano one day. And that was an adventure in itself. But running up that volcano and doing a big sky meditation once we reached, I think that was really the moment that I realized I was like, yeah, this is what I meant to see. Running with 200 folks is beautiful, but being on the top of a volcano with 6, 7 of the locals from that area, along with 8 or 9 of us from this country, and then Matt, Daniel, and whoever else was with us, being in silence and being above the clouds. And then after that, going into a coffee plantation where it was family owned, picking these berries and having this family, having these kids just laughing and running up on us and wanting to take photographs, and locals calling me Hakim, treating me, bringing me in, cooking me food. That was when I was like, I'm meant to see the world, and this is why I'm here. This is why I've been given the chance that I've been given, and to also come back and to show folks who look and sound like me that you can do this too.
Have you gone back? Have you brought people back there?
I haven't had a chance to go back. I I need to tap in with Ella Libre and do a reunion, because we did Chiapas in 18 and then we did Oaxaca in 19, and then the lockdown happened.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Oaxaca was the same thing. You know, being in a teepee on the middle of a river doing meditation and doing Qigong was absolutely mind-blowing. We did it was somewhat called like the Trail of Tears, where it was kind of like how you have the Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, but it was kind of like for the indigenous Mexicans in Oaxaca. And it was like a trail that they were built to escape the conquistadors. And we ran this trail that was like 16 miles, and you could feel the spirits guiding you as you ran that trail.
Yeah, that's heavy. I mean, how long ago was that? Like,
oh God, that
1,000? Year 1,000 or something?
Yeah.
My history's bad. You felt the resonance.
Oh, you felt it. You felt it. You could just look at the cliffs and see, you know, this was how they were dodging the conquistadors, because they knew that they weren't able to get up on these certain ridges and go through these certain little, and then to end on both occasions, the occasions in the volcano and then running through this kind of Trail of Tears, we did a Temescal ceremony, which is where it's kind of, you're in a sweat lodge and you're in the dark. And there's like 8 or 9 of you in this, and you're seeing some shit in there.
Yeah.
And that was, again, going through things like that changed my life. And then Japan.
Oh, I don't know about Japan.
You don't know about Japan?
Did we talk about this last time?
No, we didn't talk about Japan. Japan wasn't even on the radar.
Talk to me. Yeah.
So
what happened in Japan?
I got to do a campaign with this company called Rock, and one of my best friends in the world, Travis Weller, who is a pretty well-known trail runner, and this guy named Drew Smith. And for anyone who don't know who Drew Smith is one of the most incredible photographers you'll ever meet and ever see. His work is incredible. So he had just did, right before we did Japan, he had just did Jim Morrison's first ascent into some mountains. They were in Pakistan. It was the first ascent since Hillary had passed away. So Drew was on that mission. And right after that, he came with us to Japan. And originally we were going to do, we had an idea, or Rock had an idea, Rock and Travis had an idea of doing what is called a misogi. The original idea of misogi is like a ritual. It's like a Cold War ritual that spans like a week. And it's kind of like a rites of passage for older spiritual folk. I don't know from what spiritual lineage this came from, but it's basically called misogi. And Travis and Nash, who works for Rock, had this idea of, let's do our own style of misogi. And the idea was to do a misogi that was running 13 peaks within 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
These peaks were the Dicehead Susan Traverse, which is in the northern part of Japan, Hokkaido. Well, I was just talking to Travis the other day, and originally when he was like, there's a chance that we could do Japan, or there's a chance that, you know, Rock might send us to Japan. I was like, hey man, if they send you, let me go. That's a dream of mine. He's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to make this one, mate. This is kind of a dicey one. And at the time, our friend Rio Lakeshore, who's a really well-known trail runner out here, black brother, really, really dope friend of mine, an amazing runner. He was supposed to do it with Travis because they were like the models for Rock. But for whatever reason, Rio couldn't go. So Travis gave me a call one day.
You got slotted in.
I got slotted in.
Yeah. Was it more than you bargained for? How big were these peaks?
Well, it was 50-50 whether we were going to do it. So we had an A plan, a B plan, a C plan, and a D plan. And we didn't know whether it was going to be snowing because we were going we went last year around the end of May, early June time. So we were hoping to go see the rose garden season. We were hoping that it was going to be summer and sun and field. Well, we get there and it was snow, and it was big snow. So us trying to do 13 peaks, it wasn't going to happen. And then there was this a level of danger that I'm not used to. Travis somewhat, and Drew definitely. Drew just came from Pakistan. We did triple the amount. But we knew that we wanted to do it, and we wanted to at least attempt to do some type of Musogi. So we ended up not doing the 13 peaks. We ended up doing a few, and we ended up climbing Mount Ashidaki, which is the highest peak in northern Japan. And we ended up doing that. So we didn't end up doing the whole 13 peaks because the conditions were just way too rough. By the time we ended up on top of Mount Ashidaki, it was like 30, 40 mile per hour winds. You could hardly see. But we ended up summiting, and it was probably another life-changing experience in my life that I have never experienced. Or should I say it was an experience that will forever be cemented in both mine and Travis's life, Andrew's life, because Nash, who was originally supposed to come up with us, ended up having back spasms, so it was only 3 of us that went up. And it was a really, really, we were doing some knife ridges. There were some really technical parts of that mountain that we climbed, but I ended up doing it and ended up summiting in it. It was just one of the most powerful experiences that I have ever, ever, ever had in my life. And then to be in Japan, to be in the home of Zen, to be, there was just so many things, but Japan was.
But tell me more about the life-changing piece. Like, you brought it up and your eyes lit up. There was something about this that seems to have something to do with more than just the degree of difficulty in the cold and the fact that it was in Japan. Like, why was it so life transformative?
There was a brotherhood between the group of going up there. There was something that was, I got to see the world in a way that I had never, ever seen before. Vast, vast peaks and mountains. And then to be in a space where I didn't believe myself that I could do it. And then to do it, and then to look at the level of what I did, I really started thinking about my childhood and how I was raised, and thinking about my parents, and thinking about, just different ancestors who wouldn't have even dreamed of being in the space. And then there was one time where me and Travis had this moment where I looked at him, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you okay?" And the winds were coming, and it was like when you're on some mountains and you don't see anything when you're looking down. And I remember looking at him, and it was like one of those moments where if we were going to stop, we needed to stop because there was no turning back. And I looked at him, and I don't even think I said anything. I just said, "I'm good, let's go." And I think for me, there was something so... When we made that summit, I cried in a way that I never cried before. And just thinking about it now, it really, several years back, I was like, man, I was in a position where I didn't think that I would ever have an opportunity to see this type of thing in my life. I was in a position where I was like, I couldn't see, I couldn't see a foot in front of me. And here I was looking at these mountains and these clouds. And keep in mind, right before we made the summit, this couple who wore this denim Gucci
Marched right by you.
just walked right by us.
Just in case you're getting a little, big in your britches, buddy.
And we were laughing like, how the fuck did they do this? And we're
this
like,
is not Everest. Yeah.
But it just brought me to a place where I was like, there are certain things in your life that you were meant to see, that you were meant to do, and you were meant to be here. And I have this saying that it's already been written in the tapestry of the universe. We're just too blind sometimes to see it, and we are sometimes too ignorant to see it. And I got to see my life in 4K in front of me. And me and Travis hugged each other as when we made that summit. And it was just like, and Drew came in, and it was just one of those moments that it made me believe in the human existence. Like, if I could take somebody from Compton, if I could take somebody from Brixton, if I could take somebody from Hackney, if I could take somebody from Idaho who has never seen something like this, I would do it in a heartbeat, just for them to get that moment to see life in its fullness and in its totality.
It's also a punctuation mark on this evolving relationship with reinvention that you have. Like, literally and symbolically, when you climb a mountain, you stand at the top and you look down and reflect upon where you were and how you got to where you are, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to believe on some level, like, that experience is going to lend to some reflection on your own life. You mentioned, like, you were thinking about, your past. I mean, you've kind of weathered and undergone lots of changes over the course of your life. And you could say, well, there was this transformation and that transformation. I mean, in truth, it's a constant process of becoming and unfoldment that gets occasional punctuation marks that people can point to. But a heightened experience like that is going to kind of conjure that. And the emotion around it is like valuing yourself for having, trodden that difficult path.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like an act of self-honoring.
It really is. And in turn, it was a misogi. It really was a misogi. It was a trial. There was a certain trial, not by fire, but it was a trial because of what it took to get to that point, what it took to get from Sapporo to Hokkaido, to weathering what Nash was going through, not knowing if we were going to make it, not knowing how far we were going to make it, stopping at the hut and then making, they had several huts where you can sleep, at night, or, just rest up. And I just, remembering being at that hut and we all having that conversation like, okay, it's like make or break. Do we go further? Do we go do this? Because if we're going to do this in 2 days, this is what it's going to look like tonight. This is what it's going to look like tomorrow. Boom, boom, boom. And then to make the decision to just do what we did. And, there was one thought that the one part of the story that I have to say is that coming up, I was, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to climb back down. And, just coming up here is hard enough. Coming back down, how the hell am I going to do that? And I just remember coming back down and feeling like the Hakim when I was 10 years old at Christchurch Park in Ipswich, when it would snow and us going down a sledge. That's how I felt coming down those big effing mountains, sliding down. I'd never experienced a tree well. Do you know what a tree well is?
Mm-mm.
So a tree well is when there's ice in the tree, there's like a certain hole that is protected, that protects the tree. And it's pretty shallow. So if you're walking, like your whole leg will just collapse in that. So I wasn't experienced in tree wells, and I didn't know how often they came about going down. I was literally putting my foot in a tree well every other foot. We were laughing so hard that it was like 3 kids in like climbing down a sled, on a sledge, but we were literally, had our spikes on our hiking boots and sliding down this like we were 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
Just like giddy. 3 of us.
And if you could tell that kid in Ipswich, or that young guy who was cruising around Austin, or the broken man who stumbled into a Buddhist temple in Orlando, that, this is what you would be doing, and the decision you were going to have to make is whether you were going to continue to the top or turn around. Like, that would have blown any of those 3 young Hakim's minds, right? Like, so
you don't even know, mate. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it is this, it's this punctuation mark on like, a life that is one in which you've worked very hard to become the person that you are today, and one that you've also are in a position to enjoy because you've let it all go. And it's like this tension between surrender and also honoring yourself, because you did put in a lot of work to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's the conundrum at the heart of, this type of spiritual practice.
You make it sound so beautiful, Rich. You really do.
I just want you to tell the stories. But I guess I'm sort of saying that because I want to understand the nature of change and the process of reinvention. If there is like a theme that recurs the most on this show, it's like, how do you change? How do you become a better person physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And there is no one path. And there's also like no right or wrong answer. And sometimes these ways conflict with each other. They contradict each other, which makes it confusing, because people just want to know, like, well, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And life has a different way, Yeah. And so I would imagine people ask you all the time, like, how did you go from that guy to this guy to now this guy? Like, what are the steps that you undertook? Or when you reflect on that and are in a position to answer that question for somebody, how do you, think about that and respond?
Well, it's a twofold. One, my partner, Melinda, who has been really a catalyst in this change, because I hadn't really been in a relationship where I had a partner who really fully believed in what I had and could do, and never really fought me on it. She has always had an amazing ability of being my biggest cheerleader, my manager. She'll give me critique when I need it or when I don't need it. But what was really evident was that I had never experienced a type of love like that before. And that love was really, I felt safe. I felt safe going into this run culture. I felt safe going back into DJing. I felt safe teaching Tai Chi and Qigong again. She was the one who said, start teaching Tai Chi and Qigong again. And I started teaching in the backyard. 7 years later, I have a residency at the Line Hotel. She was the one who was like, go to the mountain and do this summit. Just go do it. It was the summit that I did with Conrad Anker that changed my life. So there was coming to LA. There was all these things. She didn't give me a chance to doubt myself. She was always like, this is what you need to do. So finding somebody like Melinda was really key and pivotal, because she gave me a way to she gave me the steps in order to find my own inner liberation, to find my freedom. And she gave me permission if I was going to fumble or fuck up, or she wasn't going to be there to judge me. She was going to be there to hold my hand and say, okay, let's get up and try it again. So that was a big catalyst, finding somebody who really, truly loved me and loved me in my truest, rawest state. And that was really big. That was so big. And we had some really hard times in that first year when I came from Orlando to LA. And it was really, really hard. And she believed in me and really trusted me. And we still continue to work together in therapy, which is a segue into therapy. Therapy. You know, I went 40-something years of not having one therapy session. And I went into therapy and had couples therapy and then had my own therapist. And then, you know, I just had therapy with Melinda today. And therapy, like, it gave me a chance to look at myself and past traumas, stuff with my parents, stuff with my kids. You know, it just really forced me. No, I don't want to use the word force. It gave me a chance to really look at these things that I had never, ever looked at, because I put them in the deepest recesses of my mind or put them in the deepest recesses of my body. And I didn't want to touch them anymore. And these therapists brought them back out. And shout out to Danae, who's our therapist right now. Danae is incredible in the aspect of really showing us, like, no, you were here to show Hakim how to do this. No, you were here, Melinda, to show. So therapy has been really a game changer for me. And, you know, there's this really big misnomer or this really big thing within, you know, the Black community around therapy. And I don't need therapy. And I was one of those. That's like, I don't need therapy. What do I need therapy for? Therapy's some white shit. That ain't me. This everyone needs therapy. I can honestly say anyone and everyone needs therapy, to the point that I've, you know, talked to my kids about therapy. You know, it's really been one of those things that if I had the opportunity to talk to these young Hakims, I would say jump into therapy. You know, had I known about therapy even when I was at Whole Foods and I had it and I had access to it, I didn't even use it because I was just, I don't need it. And it took me getting to a certain point and trusting Melinda and trusting the process in being like, that really was something that I needed. And that's why, you know, we talk about Phil Stutz. Mm-hmm. And I just want to give that man the X amount of flowers, because I watched that and I cried like a baby, because it brought so many things and it made me look at my life in so many different ways that therapy, anyone and everyone should do it. I can't champion it enough. Therapy was this game changer. Mm.
That was not the answer that I thought you were going to give. It's so interesting. I like lobbed this ball in your direction about the driving forces of reinvention, and your answer was a partner who loved you unconditionally and was able to see your highest self or the potential of your highest self, mm-hmm. and was in support of that. Mm-hmm. That blooming in you, right? Mm-hmm. And then therapy, because you're the Zen Buddhist guy who teaches Qigong and meditation and mindfulness. So mm-hmm. I was preparing myself for a good dose of that side of the equation.
You know, I'll tell you, because and a lot of people think that, but here's the thing: meditation can't save you. And
it's also not therapy.
And it's not therapy.
It's not going to heal your childhood trauma.
And it's not. And
or
it's not.
Absolve you of your resentments.
And it isn't. And it isn't. Yeah. And you know what? People know that. People know that I really lean on meditation and I really lean on, my Buddhist practice. But there's more than that. And I think, no, let me not say that. I don't think, I know that in these years of doing what I've done and being where I've been, a lot of it was I had to fight imposter syndrome because I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was meant to be in Japan. I didn't feel like I was meant to be in Chiapas, or I didn't feel that I should be at the outside festival, or I had to fight for so many years this imposter syndrome of stuff that I've been doing for 20, 30 years and still not believing. So the minute that somebody said, I actually do believe in you, I actually do think that you are somebody who could really change the climate of the world and change the climate of how you see this. That was a game changer, because you're not going to find that being in the Vipassana, sitting 7, 8 days in silence. You're going to find something, but you also need people in your corner who are going to really push and support you. Just like you have your wife. Just like you have your partner. Just like you have certain friends who are going to really lobby and push and really, you know. And at the end of the day, the person that I would always come to is my partner. And I have my altar, and I have my partner, and I have my kids. And those are the ones who really have really brought me into the space that I'm into right now. Buddha, of course, Buddha's always going to be there. And the Vipassana practice of being in silence and being in those spaces where I have the privilege to go away to be in silence is amazing. But there's something more than that. And I think, you know, as I said, as somebody who came up, I always tried to be, you know, I had immigrant parents from Jamaica who didn't have anything. So growing up, they were like, you have to be this. We need you to be this. You got to be the one who goes to college. You got to be the one who, you know, be the breadwinner. We want you to have a house. We want you. So there was a lot of pressure. And I had to fit these molds and had to fit these things. And then, as I said, when I got to that stage where I thought I lost everything and boom, 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 I had to rebuild myself back up. I had to reinvent, as you said, you know, the reinvention. And that's when I, you know, really homed in on what is reinvention? How do you reinvent? How do you reinterpret or redesign and reconfigure? You have to break shit down. You have to dismantle. You have to destroy old misnomers. You have to do the destroying in order to build what you need to build. And I destroyed a lot of I destroyed a lot of the old legacies, a lot of the old stories. And I moved to LA. And I had somebody who had my back in a way that I'd never had before. More so than my parents. More so than, and I shouldn't say more so than my parents, because my parents, I love my parents, but I tell the story that my parents didn't tell me that they loved me until I was 25. You know what I mean? I didn't get that. So having a woman telling me that I'm going to support you and I got your back unconditionally, and we're going to make it, and you are way destined to do more than this. Let's try this out. Let's try this out. Let's try this out. It's like a vegan gumbo, putting the Vipassanas, putting that woman, putting, you know, the experiences. And if I was to whisk that vegan gumbo together, that is how Hakim is where he's at today.
Yeah, that was very elegantly and beautifully put. Over the last decade of hosting this podcast, my mission has been to engage in what I consider to be critically important conversations about the things that matter most in life. While I'm immensely grateful for the growth of this show, I've also come to realize that my voice alone is not enough. This mission cannot be a solitary endeavor. So I wanted to find a way to help amplify other meaningful voices. And the result is Voicing Change Media, this beautiful consortium of thinkers, storytellers, artists, and visionaries, all committed to fostering meaningful exchanges, intentionally curated for those committed to the path of self-discovery. Together, we're creating a space of growth, a space of understanding, where every exchange has the potential to enrich our lives and catalyze profound personal and planetary change. Visit voicingchange.media to learn more and subscribe. I think that what maybe got lost in your account or in the way you just described your story is the fact that you had to put in the work to become the person who was worthy of being with someone like Melinda, right? So it's not like, oh, you just lucked into it. Like there was a lot of inner work that was occurring prior to that relationship, right?
For sure.
So you're shouldered with all this responsibility and expectation. So what do? You go out in the world and you say, fuck that, and you do what you want and you blow the whole thing up, right? Because on some level, there's resentment or some unhealed trauma of not feeling, like love was unconditional in your house and not having your emotional needs met, essentially, right? Which sets you on a certain trajectory until you crash and burn, right? But you can't be a phoenix until there's a big fat fire, right? So you got to do that. And then you start throwing in the ingredients into the gumbo, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and when you're doing it, you don't know what you're doing or where it's going to head or why you're even doing it. But there's nothing else to do because everything else has disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of with yourself, forced to meet yourself maybe for the very first time as you truly are. And that's scary and uncertain, but beautiful also, right? It creates this situation of receptivity where suddenly you are open to things you weren't before because your options have been taken away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why now I do all this stuff.
So the question then becomes, for me, because this is my dilemma, then when everything's clicking and everything's good, how do you stay connected to that? Because for me, I just get caught up in my own mind and I take my self-will back and it becomes just a little bit harder to do that surrender thing because I got shit going on.
Yeah.
I got to call that guy and I got people coming to the studio and it's all good and it's rocking, right? That's a recipe for disaster because now you think once again that you're the big boss in control and you're basically, setting yourself up for another reckoning. So staying connected to what got you to that place, I think is essential, but also becomes more challenging when your life kind of falls back into place or you are able to repair that wreckage and get to a place where you do feel good in your own skin and like you're on the right path.
The work doesn't stop. I mean, that's why I still do therapy.
But you're very committed. It is number one. You get up, you have your whole routine.
I do.
This is non-negotiable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would say that I am always negotiating it.
Because I've been in a place where there was no negotiation.
Right. But now things are chill, right? This is my question. This is what I'm saying. So now, the pressure's off, right?
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that commitment? How do you stay connected to the essentialism of it as your number one priority?
I have role models. I wouldn't call them role models. I have folks who I greatly admire, who somewhat like me have been through a journey and have been through certain things in order to get them where they are now. And I also recognize when I'm not getting any younger, the value that I have for my body and my heart, mind, I value it so much more now. So, I don't take it for granted. Yeah, it's a routine for me. I get up in the morning, work out, go run, drink my 100 gallons of green tea, all these things that I'm used to. But here's one thing I put into you. I have a lot of friends, when I look at their IGs, they're obituary accounts. So many friends and acquaintances have died in these last couple of years that I've seen. This guy died. This person died. This person died. And I realized my life can be taken just like that. So in the aspect of being present as much as I can in every moment, in any situation, in every situation, and looking at the beauty in those situations, I try to, without sounding kumbaya and rose-tinted glasses, because shit ain't gonna be like that all the while, but for the most part, I'm thankful that I have the ability to get up and do what I do every morning, to get 2-3 hours to work out, to paint Enzos, to meditate, to have the opportunity to go to Spirit Rock, teach mindful movement, to go to the Outside Festival, to go to this festival, to go DJ, to do sound baths, to do... It took a level of work, but trusting in myself to know that this feels really good and I love where I'm at right now. And I knew what it was to be in this position and that I don't ever want to be in this position ever again. And I like what it is to be here. So let me just do what I can to be the best human being that I can, to be the best partner that I can, to be the best father that I can, and to be the best person that I can show up to whoever it is, whether I know you, whether I've met you for the first time, or whether I've known you for years. Because it's just how I've been. Again, I just remember that time where I might not have been on this earth. But I understand what has been written in the tapestry of the universe, and I love what has been written. And I understand that there are new stories that are being written, whether I know it or not. And I'm just really being present with it and enjoying it and seeing what comes, because this has just been one of those years that has just blown my mind, being in Paris, being in Costa Rica, being in, like,
You've been around.
Yeah, I've been around, and it's this, the opportunities. I was just telling somebody just the other day, I have an innate ability, and I don't know how it is. I was just in London and Paris, and I was with some of the most heavyweight DJs in the world. Then I'm at the Outside Festival, and I'm with some of the most pivotal people within the Black, Brown, Indigenous spaces and within the outside spaces. I'm in London, where I just ran a marathon, and I'm hanging with every heavy hitter in every run crew. How is it that I'm in these spaces? I don't know, but I give thanks, and I don't take it lightly. And I recognize the privilege that I have. So, I want to be as authentic and as true to anyone and everyone that I come into contact with. I also want to be of service to the folks that I can. That's why I love doing things like with the youth and taking them into the mountains and, trying to work on getting into the prison systems and doing work like my friend Vinny Ferraro and my friend Oscar Medina, and doing things like teaching the Brahma Viharas, teaching people how to love and how to find themselves. These are the things. And yeah, I don't take it lightly that I'm here in this spot talking to Rich Roll, having this.
Well, there's a humility, in your voice. Like, you're very connected to your humility. And it feels like that helps to keep you grounded. Hawk's not in charge. All these, players that you're meeting in all these different places and all these exotic locations that you've traveled to, you're not taking credit for that. Like you're honoring yourself, but you're also appreciating that greater forces are at play. That's what I'm hearing in your voice.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's all divinity, isn't it, on some level?
It is.
Right?
It is. And, I look at myself as being a spiritual being living a human existence. And then I know there's this whole, are you a human being living a spiritual experience, or are you a spiritual being living a human experience? I honestly look at myself as a spiritual being living a human existence, and really just taking it one step at a time, but really being present with it, being observant of it, and being humble with it, and knowing that my ancestors put me in this position for a certain reason. I understand the platforms that I have. I understand the leverage I have. I understand the privileges that I have. But I also understand that the ancestors put me in this position, and I heed the words of the ancestors. And I really, really don't want to upset the ancestors. I want to be my ancestors' wildest dreams.
You know how they say you kind of hear what you need to hear? It's like, I needed to hear this today. It is my dilemma. Like, I have so much to be grateful for, and I'm hyper aware of this incredible life that I get to live. Like, it's not like it doesn't elude me. Like, I'm fully present in this miracle that I know I didn't create. But I get caught up in the day, and things are happening, and it's very easy for me to disconnect from that or lose sight of it. Like, I'm not present. And I know the antidote, the solution is more meditation, right? More mindfulness. There's all these things. It's like, but those are the moments where I'm like, I don't do it. It's like, it's that joke, like, if you're too busy to meditate, then you need to meditate twice as long. Bad idea. But when you're in the moment, it's very hard to course correct, And so I think having hard and fast rules around what these practices are the guardrails that I'm lacking, because I negotiate with myself around them too much. And that allows me to make excuses. And every time I do that, I put distance between myself and the better version of myself, who is more grateful, more present, more aware, more honoring, all of those things that I can be, have been, know how to be, but need to do a better job of making sure that that's the first thing and not the 10th thing on the to-do list, right?
Yeah. It's priorities. And those inner priorities, the inner work, or what do they call it? The shadow work.
What does that look like for you?
The shadow work for me is a lot of deep reflections, a lot of when I get up in the morning and going down to my studio and putting some Pharoah Sanders on, or putting some John Coltrane on, and thinking, really, really having a deep meditation, like, what are you trying to do? What does it look like for you? What are you trying to do today? What are you trying to do at this moment? How is it looking for you? And having those deep internal, having two older sisters and not really being more of an only child, you tend to think a lot. You tend to overanalyze. You tend to, and sometimes we have this saying in Buddhism called papancha, where you make up these stories in your head that may not necessarily be true, but you have these stories in your head.
Usually not.
They're usually not. I think I just really come to a point in my life where I just really know and trust what I want now. And I just really have deep conversations with myself that I'm not afraid to have. I'm not afraid to check myself. I'm not afraid to have those looks in the mirror internally and be like, nah, bro, you're kind of fucking up. You need to kind of step it up a little bit here, or you need to maybe just kind of turn it down a notch. Having those internal conversations, which I have a lot, that's all I've ever known. So I do a lot of internal work.
The trick with that, though, is not to fall into the trap of self-loathing, right? I mean, you could just flog yourself. You should have done that. You should be better. What are you doing that
that's
again?
Where the Brahma Viharas come in.
These are two different things, like owning your shit and holding yourself to account, but not coming from a place of guilt or shame.
Exactly.
Coming from a place of honoring yourself because you know you can be better.
And you can, yeah, exactly. And that's where the Brahma Viharas come in. That's where the love and kindness, the joy, the compassion, the equanimity. And equanimity is really, really big. Equanimity, having a spiritual authority about yourself, knowing what makes you tick spiritually, is something that is really big for me, and I think was really grounding for me. I know that I'm trying to live a certain lifestyle. I know that I'm trying to be a certain way. I know that I need that loving kindness for myself. I need that compassion for myself. I need to give myself grace. I talk to countless of clients who call me and say, I don't know how to have grace for myself. I don't know how to have compassion for myself. Those years of having to find myself, I had to learn how to give myself grace. I had to learn how to love myself again, how to be kind to myself again. And all of that brought me to a certain equanimity, but a certain autonomy. Like, I know this is how I am. And this is how I structure myself. And if I want to be a better person, this is what I need to do to be that better person. I need to meditate. I need to talk to my partner a little bit better. I need to be a little bit more interactive with my son. I need to talk to Nai. I need to talk to Leia. I need to do this with Isla a little bit. All these things come into play. And I'm not afraid to look at myself and have those hard conversations. And I'm not afraid to love myself and give myself grace and compassion. There's a middle path to everything. And I think that's the key point, is really knowing how to balance and structure that. Because if you get trapped in the self-loathing, the self-hate, the self-doubt, that's going to lead you down a hard road. And honestly, that's just dukkha. That's just dukkha. That's the straight up dukkha. Doubting self, fearing, not knowing. It's scary not knowing what's going to happen. It's scary not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow or what's going to happen the next day. There's doubt. All these things, in Buddhist term, we call that dukkha. All these dukkhas come up. But I've been training hard like I was an Olympic athlete in how to battle dukkha. I'm on my Jesse Owens type business. You know what I mean? I'm on my Jacka Joyner Kersey type business, where I'm not trying to let dukkha dictate my life, because dukkha dictated my life for so many years that I'm not letting dukkha run my life anymore. So I'm now training, just like I tell my students with Tai Chi, when you do certain movements, you do it over and over and over again because it becomes muscle memory. So the things that I do, getting up, saging myself, lighting the incense, doing my ice baths, doing, listening to spiritual jazz instead of some rah-rah business to soothe my nervous system, finding ways to restructure and soothe my nervous system, going on a run, going on a nice long run and, doing a little microdose and doing a little adventure, you know what I mean? This is all the things that I do is to put myself in a position where I can keep things in balance and keep things in check and not have to let dukkha come in and tell me, oh man, you should be worried. You should be worried about paying for that, or how are you going to get to that? When I knew I was going to England to run a marathon, old me would have been freaking out about how much I got to pay for this ticket and how much I got to pay for that ticket. How am I going to get this Airbnb and all that? I didn't. I didn't worry about it. I knew I was going to have a fun time. I knew we were going to have a fun time in Paris. I knew we were going to have a fun time, boom, boom, boom. Everything works out the way it needs to work out. And I know it sounds cliche, and I know it's like, because you can't let just the spirit just take everything, but you have to have a verified faith in your spirituality in order to move and navigate through the world the way that I move. I understand there's a spiritual urgency, but as I said, if we come back to the four Brahma Viharas, there's a thing within that equanimity where I know I'm good. I'm good.
Preach it. Preach it, man. That was amazing. How do you think about the intersection between movement, running, mindfulness, and spirituality? Because one thing I've learned is obviously there's a deep spiritual connection by just simply being in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an active meditation piece to running in silence yourself in nature. But meditation, formally defined, is a different thing. And I think for many years, I sort of thought, well, I don't need to meditate because my meditation is running. And I've learned through practice that that is not true, that my formal meditation practice is actually quite qualitatively different from the mindfulness benefits that I get from running. But I think it's important not to confuse them.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in how you think about this intersection.
Yeah, it's really important because I think they're all part of the same they're all part of the same puzzle in the aspect of, here's an example. I had an injury not so long back where I really ripped my ankle up. I don't know, grade 3, grade 4. I don't know how they grade it, but it was a pretty serious one, and I was on crutches. And I remember one of my clients asked me, how are you taking that? Because I know that you're really into running and you're really into, running is a piece for you. So now that you've not got that running, how are you taking it? How are you? And honestly, it was one of the first times that I actually loved having that injury, because it forced me to do other things. It forced me to get on the road. It forced me to do the assault bike. It forced me to walk, slow walk. It forced me to think about my body in a way that I never thought about before. And I was good with it. And the pieces of that was that I got into my meditation practice even more at that point. And I guess the meditation practice for me was just a validation to say, you're okay. You're really good. You're okay. Just sink into the breath and sink into the logic of why you're doing this and why it feels good at this moment in time. And I leaned on that. And then I leaned on to Qigong. And I realized that, certain movements are going to really help with the pain. Certain movements are going to really help with the movement of the qi and the blood flow in the foot. And so I look at it, again, if we're looking at it as a dish, I look at it as a great salad. And then the music, and then when you add music, as part of really soothing the nervous system, really soothing, different parts of the brain, different parts of the mind. When you add all these things together, or you look at the intersections, they all are synergistic within each other. People like to separate them as their own thing, but they all work as a grand unit. And if we really look into all these things, the mindfulness, the running, the stretching, the eating, the music, all of that goes hand in hand, going out to run to feel that liberation. Even, we talk about Toby and the plunge, there is something very restorative and very mindful about putting the body through that, right? And then going from that into the sauna, and then just adding, the mindful piece or the meditation piece, adding all of these are all restorative. These are all restorative acts. They are also all radical acts too. And when you look at the radical nature of running, when you look at the radical nature of being mindful, when you look at the radical nature of sitting in silence for 30 or 40 minutes, you realize that it's really part of a beautiful salad. And really, they all go hand in hand. When I meditate, and then when I put the Tai Chi is a mindful movement. The Qigong is a mindful movement. The running is a mindful movement. All of those work hand in hand. And then the meditation piece is really kind of like the nos. It's really like the fuel injection. Because when you get to meditate, you really get to tune in with your body and your spirit and your inner psyche and your inner self in 4K. There's no running away from it when you really dig deep. You're looking at shit in 4K. So now you take those elements and you put those elements within the running. And you go out in nature. Yes, it's not a meditation, but there are elements of that meditative practice in it. The Tai Chi, the Qigong, when you have a group of people, or even by yourself, but if you have a group of people and you just listen to 10 or 20 people breathing synergistically, there is something so harmonious and so auspicious about that. And then, again, with music has a way of bringing people together in a way that is very harmonious and very liberating. When people dance, and when people really dance, they're letting out their inner soul. You see it. You see it. You go to a festival and you see certain folks dancing and they're letting their inhibitions go. They're getting free. So in a way, all these things are a way of showing you how to find true sense of liberation and inner freedom.
I never thought about the through line between all of these practices, from music to Tai Chi to meditate, like the consistent theme being these tools to not only tune the individual, but tune the collective.
Yes.
Right? Like how music gets everybody on the same frequency in the way that, like, that's what Tai Chi is doing.
Yeah.
Right? This is like the same thing in certain ways.
Yeah.
Or the run club.
Or the run crew.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a certain frequency. When everyone's doing the scoop and everyone's doing their stretches, and then you move, and then you hear that collected breath, there's something powerful about that. There's something so organic about that. It's like when you're watching a flock of birds, or you're watching elephants running together, or you're seeing a herd of sheep together. There's a certain mystic energy about that. So then again, as I said, you look at that salad and you look at that intersection of all of those. They all fit. They all fit. And they fit very beautifully if you're able to just be open to see how compatible they are.
Before you can enjoy that salad, though, you got to throw a few ingredients into the vegan gumbo, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Now you're going to look at that.
Let it simmer to mix the metaphors here.
Yeah.
Speaking of run crews, you mentioned that you were in London. You ran the London marathon.
Yeah.
And you got to spend some time with your boy, Charlie Dark.
Oh.
I've only met him once. I met him at the Strava event, not this past year, the year before. And I just think that guy's amazing. And then I read your Instagram caption to that photo that you posted, the two of you together. I was like, these guys must know each other. And sure enough, you hadn't met until 2018, but you were stalking him in the early aughts, right? Like,
I think,
and he became like this mentor to you, or like a sort of lighthouse.
Yeah, for sure. And have him tell you, he was like,
well, explain to people who this guy is for people that don't know.
So Charlie Dark is, what can you say about this cat? Charlie Dark is a world-renowned DJ. A world-renowned DJ. He was part of a group called Attica Blues, who were a really big group in the early 90s on Ninja Tune or Mowax, one of the two. He got into running. And this was around 2010, 2011. And he, along with some individuals, Mike Sace from New York, Cedric Hernandez from New York, and then there were some other cats from Japan and Seoul. And they were originally, I would say they were the originators of what we see today as run crew culture. And Charlie has a crew called Run Them Crew in London. And along with Bridge Runners of New York, AFE, PRRC in Seoul, Berlin Braves, the Craft Runners in Berlin and Germany, and so many other crews, they formed this thing called Bridge the Gap. And it was a way of getting all these different runners of somewhat style and color and etiquette together. And, we wouldn't have run crew culture if it wasn't for the likes of Charlie. And over the years, Charlie has been one of those big spokespeople about running for the love of running. He's a global Lululemon ambassador. He has worked for Nike. He has worked for ASICS. He has worked for all these top brands within run crew culture. So many folks have come to him as mentors or mentees within Run Crew, within brand work. He has given so many synopsises on how to work with brands because he's been doing it since the dawn of time. And then on top of that, he's become a yoga teacher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's become a yoga teacher. He is a great speaker. One of the greatest speakers. I heard him in London. You want to talk about turning bread into wine or turning, turning base metals into gold. Charlie can do that. I saw Charlie speak to 150, 200 people. You would think he was Moses the way he talks. He really has a way of inspiring folks. He's inspired folks from all over the world. He's talked about running for mental health. He'll tell you he's seen folks die from not being supported through mental health within his own run crew, and has been a really big supporter on running and how running is really big for mental health and for the youth. He's led youth programs that have now led to Run Them, Swim Them crew. So many different facets. So many crews have come out of Charlie's wheelhouse. I could go on and on, but Charlie has been this Charlie is in what we call a triple OG, more so than an OG is a triple OG. And I was stalking him from 2013. We met in 2018, and somebody who I regard as a mentor and my Yoda. He's basically my Yoda. And the relationship we have is this incredible.
Other than setting an example for you to follow, what was his influence? What was his counsel or advice to you?
His key thing for me, especially since of late, was carve my lane. Know your lane and carve it. He gave me much like Melinda, if Melinda was in a male form, I would say it would be Charlie, because Charlie really gave me permission, like a blessing, like if Cool Herc gave...
Go forth, son.
Yeah.
Yes, and prosper.
Yeah. He was like, this is what you're meant to do. I mean, when I was dabbling with the Tai Chi and Qigong, he was the one who was like, you need to make this bigger. He was the one who was really big with me teaching mindfulness to runners, was really, really big about it, and was like, no one's doing it. You're carving yourself your own lane. Even with me coming back out and DJing, he was like giving me pointers on what to do, on how to attack it. Like, you need to do this. This is how you can do this. Carve your own lane. And really has been telling me how to innovate what I'm doing in a way that no one else has done. And as I said, if I could surmise it, I feel like I'm Luke in the Dagobah system with the Yoda. And how Yoda was in the Dagobah system when Luke had to lift the X-Wing fighter, you know, doing a handstand, is kind of like how I feel with Charlie, and how I'm maneuvering with showing up in the world. That's like, this is how you treat people. This is how you act towards people. This is how you leave a legacy. One of the things that I saw in 2018 when I met Charlie was we were at a Bridge the Gap event in the Bronx. And there was probably about 300 of us out there in the Bronx of all different crews, sounding like the Warriors. And it literally was. And I remember when Charlie came up and walked through, you would think it was Yoda. I mean, the amount of respect that guy got, you know what I mean? Like, you hear stories of like when Malcolm walked in the Audubon, or when, you know, Martin talked at Selma. You know, you hear these mythological stories of these great human individuals that are just able to speak to people in a way that you've never heard before. Dalai Lama, you've met Dalai Lama, so you know. There's certain individuals like that. Charlie is one of those people. And as I said, I just remember seeing him move and the way he moved. And one of the things that he taught me is you have to carry yourself in a certain way. You have to carry yourself in a certain way that people will respect you, people would admire you, people will, but you gotta show up. Don't show up like you're holier than them, like you're bigger than them, like you've got something. Come as a human being. Come as humble as you are, but know that you are the shit in a certain way, in certain form. And this was, to me, coming in 2018, I wasn't really who I was in the Run Crew culture. I was really a no one, but he made me feel bigger than I really was. And I never forget that. And then for him to be somebody who I looked up to and was like, no, you're my peer. You're my peer. Yeah, I got a little bit more years on you, but you're my peer. And then he told me that I was there for him in a part of his life that I didn't know that I helped him. And hear him sharing that vulnerability and that human aspect. Because you meet certain folks and they're like, they're douches. Just to be plain out simple. Yeah. They're really, like, on a level, they look like they're powerful and they look superhuman and then you meet them and you're like, man, that's that person. Charlie gave me the antithesis of that. To where I was like, I want to be like him. When I step into a room, I want that type of respect. I want to be held in that same type of adoration. And I just started studying how he moved and would have talks with him. And we would just, you know, we have each other on WhatsApp and I would just call him and I'd just ask him for information. And he would give me, you know, whenever I'd go on a rant on Instagram, he'd be like, you don't need to do that. What's that for? And if Melinda showed me how to soften my heart in another way, Charlie showed me how to soften my heart in another way. Like, I learned how I didn't have to be militant all the while. I didn't have to be Captain Revolutionary all the time. You remember when Malcolm went to Mecca and he came back? Malcolm's heart softened. He was still radical, but he wasn't like kill Whitey and da-da-da, because he had broken bread with every color under the rainbow when he went to do his Hajj. Talking to Charlie and really reasoning and building and really just learning how to maneuver in life as a person and an individual, as a leader, was much like me going to Mecca and doing my Hajj.
Wow.
It made me see things in such a bigger picture.
That's a beautiful gift that he gave you.
For sure.
I got to get that guy on the show.
You really, really do. You really, really do. I mean,
his energy is definitely infectious. There was a lot about what you just shared, though, that I didn't know.
You know, when I tell you...
Special cat.
Yeah, special cat. Yeah. And I mean, you know, he's worked with a lot of heavy hitters. He's been burnt by a lot of heavy hitters. He's been burnt by a lot of brands. And, you know, the guy is Sir Charlie Dark's OBE now. So I don't know if any of you folks know what OBE and MBE is. Those are awarded to you from the Queen.
The king now.
The king now.
Did you get it from the king or the queen?
Well, he got it from the Queen.
He did. Okay.
He got it from the Queen.
He's had it for a minute.
Yeah, he's had it for a minute. So he's Dr. Darks, and he got an honorary doctorate too.
Order of the British Empire.
Exactly. Well,
speaking of the DJ piece, I mean, he also kind of inspired you to get in front on this. And now you've got this radio show, like this My Analog. What is this? What is going on with this like YouTube live stream?
Yeah.
DJ like residency that you have right now?
Well, I have a radio show, 101.5 FM, Boyle Heights Community Arts Conservatory. But My Analog Journal was really a big deal. And Charlie, if you go on there, you'll see a Charlie episode. But these folks have a YouTube station and they have DJs from all over the world, all over the country. And it's a place in Hackney in London.
Oh, wow.
They have this live stream and they have all different music. They have Irish folk, they have funk, they have African boogie, they have Mexican psych, all different types. And they have over 1.5 million subscribers.
Yeah, it's a big channel.
It's a big channel.
And it's a beautiful set. And basically you just do a set, right?
You just do a set.
And you do what you want.
Yeah.
And then it's just up there and available.
So here's where Charlie comes in. Again, another Charlie story. So I told him that I was going to start DJing, and I really, you know, I was really gunning for like Dub Lab or NTS or Lot Radios. Those are underground radio stations. But obviously no one's heard of me. I was new, no one really. And Charlie just kept saying to me, stay the course, trust the process. Because I have a different niche with my music. My music isn't one, I still play vinyl records. And two, my main bag is like spiritual jazz fusion.
Yeah, you're
jazz.
like slipping in spiritual monologues into like jazz riffs and stuff.
Yeah. So I have a different niche. And he was like, perfect. Again, you've got your own lane. Stick with that lane and keep with it. And, he gave me the trust. He was like, people need that right now. So you need to do it. And there's going to be ways you can do it. And he would give me little tips. And he would say, do that, do this. I said, I want to do a radio show. 2 weeks later, I got a radio show.
You're a powerful manifester. But you got Mr. Miyagi telling you to wax on, wax off over here.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And then I made a mix. And, again, when you don't get opportunities, you make your opportunities. And I had an opportunity. I saw this My Analog Journal. He did it, and I saw him do it, and it was incredible. And I was just like, you know what? Let me send him out an email. I'm going out there to do the marathon. Let me just try it and see what happens. If they say no, I'm good with it. But they didn't say no. And they were like, well, can you come in? And that was like 2 months. And I was like, no, I can't come. I can't come until the marathon. And lo and behold, I got a bib for the London Marathon at the age of 50, which was so kismet because 2 years ago or a year ago, I had a conversation with one of my training partners, Jimmy. We were running the LA Marathon Shakeout. I was doing a shakeout run where I was leading a meditation. And we had a conversation. I was like, yeah, I would love to do London when I become 50.
Mm.
And I didn't know if it was going to happen. And then it happened. And I got a bib.
So what do you make of all that?
You know what I mean? So I got to do London when I was 50. And then I called him I emailed him. I was like, hey, I can't do it in 2 months, but I can come and do it when I run London. And I end up doing it, and the rest is history.
Beautiful. And then just the other week, you did the Travis Barker 5K thing with Toby, right?
Yeah. And
that kind of came out of nowhere and happened really quickly. Like Travis made a teaser little video where he was running and in this Forrest Gump kind of thing. And then it was just sort of like more will be announced. And then suddenly like it seemed like 2 weeks later there was a race.
It was at the Forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it happened to be at the Forum the day of their sold out concert.
Oh. So Blink was playing there that evening.
So they already,
that makes sense.
There was stuff in there. But we didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, again, being in spaces, Toby's a really good mate of mine. Toby Morse. We all know Toby.
Friend of the pod.
Yeah.
Friend IRL.
Yeah. Who's my brother. Like my brother. I love that guy. Me and Toby start running. And, you know, Toby's an influencer, man. Toby's an influencer whether he knows it or not.
He's an influencer's influence.
Yes.
You came out and we made that video project.
Which was one of the first times he ran with a
Solomon.
group.
And then I dragged him out and he was like, he was like, I don't really run, you know?
Yeah.
But something about that day clicked, right? And then he was like on his running journey all of a sudden. And now he's like all about it.
Yeah.
But he's an influencer's influencer because he's behind the scenes, like talking to people that mere mortals don't get to talk to.
Oh, dude.
And telling them what's what, you know?
Toby is one of those individuals, man. I mean, Toby doesn't know how much power he has. But Toby is, I really feel like Toby is the reason why Travis is running. Mm-hmm. And the way that Travis is running is like, I mean, that guy was doing like 650-minute miles.
He's always been a very good athlete and he's always like worked out and been very conscious of his health. But the running thing I think is new.
Yeah.
For Travis.
Yeah. And it was such a beautiful thing. Toby makes you feel like a superstar. Whenever you're around Toby will make you feel like a superstar. So we were hanging out with Toby. It's me, you know, Alex Buck. It's me, Alex, and then Toby's son, who's now running.
Max.
Yeah, Max is running. Toby's wife, Moon, she was walking. But it was a crew of us. And then John.
John Lewis.
The badass vegan. Yeah. Shout out John, who is bloody huge. I don't remember him being this huge 10 years ago, but he's huge. But it was so fun. We got to hang out with Trav. I can say that. I got to hang out with Trav. I've met him a couple of times now. But no, Travis is really cool. Very, very cool cat. Kourtney Kardashian, who you know he's married to. And it was a really, really well done event. It was a really well done event. You know, for it being in the heart of Inglewood, it was a diverse crowd. And it was a really big deal. It was, and for Travis to come and actually run. And,
with everybody.
Yeah, to run with everyone. It was really cool, man. And it was just really cool. It was a really good group of us, you know. It was very punk rock. But it was just really good. I wish you could have been there because it was good seeing Toby. It was good seeing Toby and Travis, knowing that they have a really great relationship. And now to see them having a relationship around running is beautiful.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. And I can say that I can pat myself on the back, because if it wasn't for me getting Toby in the running and you getting him in the running, we can both pat ourselves on the back that Travis is now running.
Yeah.
And goodness knows how many more other people are running. So high fives on that.
I mean, I'm not taking credit for
you can
anything
take credit
here,
for that.
like,
you can take credit for that.
Yeah, the domino effect. It's what it is a lesson in understanding that your words and your actions have more power than you might imagine.
Big time.
Because they can set in motion subtle energies that have influence that ripples out. And, it's not dramatic generally, but it's nonetheless the case, right?
For sure.
And, you may never know what that influence is, but understand that it is real, I think, right?
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, it's
big
cool.
time.
It's cool. Well, we got to wrap this up, dude, but I want to leave people with some kind of spiritual download. I mean, you're on fire, bro. Like, you're just dropping crazy, spiritual truisms, hot koans, right? But for someone who maybe is a little bit newer to these sorts of ideas and is interested in deepening their spiritual connection, maybe instead of a practice, maybe lay out the value proposition.
The values are really priceless in the fact that you get to, one, have connections with folks that you may not have had interactions with before. There's a level of killing the ego or the ego death. When you're able to somewhat go through an ego death, there is somewhat of a opening and a releasing and a revolutionary act that's happening in you. There's a surrendering. And that surrender is a lightening load off your whole existence. There's value in being able to be free of those things, as I said, the dukkha's, the fear, the doubt. And those are natural because we're living in a human existence. Those are natural, but they can be lessened. They can be lessened with doing certain things like the practice of meditation, the practice of the mindfulness, the practice of just being in, living those good qualities. The value in it is that you become better stewards of your family. Through this, the relationship with my daughters, I was just telling my therapist this today, my relationship with my daughters now, because I've learned how to soften my heart. In Tara Brach says, there's a saying in Theravada where it's called a sure heart's release. It's when you fully let your heart open and you just release it. There's lifting that burden off. There's unlocking that cage, because a lot of us have a cage around our heart mind. And I like to say heart mind because there's a quality of mind within the heart. And there's a lot of us that have that caged. Through these practices, you get to open that heart space. And that heart space opens up and liberates you even more fully. We're in very chaotic, damaging, detrimental situations where there's a lot of hope being lost and a lot of people's hearts are hardened. When the antithesis could be if we learn how to soften our hearts, if we learn how to unshackle a lot of those gates that are guarding our hearts, we could be able to think and be more free in our minds and our thoughts. Those are the qualities, those are the values that you have if you can just let go and surrender and be open to what's new and trusting the process. There's a process and it might not seem clear at first, but if you just really learn to understand the heart and what makes the heart grow fonder and what makes the heart flourish, you can find that liberation. And that's going to open up more doors for you in the way that you maneuver through the world with love, with life, the way you act with your bosses, the way you move through your business, the way you move through how you treat your wife, your partner. Not being afraid to surrender, not being afraid to let go of what doesn't service you, and not being afraid to meet new challenges and face them head on, and not be afraid to move with that same vigor and that same passion that you might move with if you were getting the best ice cream you ever tasted, or you were getting the best dinner you ever tasted, moving with that same vigor, even in the unknown, because you are able to trust yourself and knowing that there is such sweet freedom and liberation behind that.
Well, Charlie Dark might be your Yoda, but right now, I think you're mine, brother. That was unbelievable. That is the way we're going to end this podcast, because it's not going to get any better than that, everybody, right? Unbelievable, my friend. That was beautiful. I love you so
much. I love you too, brother.
Thank you for bringing so much conscious, present awareness to this experience today. You're a special cat, my friend.
Thank you, man. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here and to help share your message. I'd love to spend more time with you.
Likewise.
Yeah, I'm sitting across from you. I'm like, why don't I hang out with this guy all the time?
We're gonna make that happen.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna make that happen.
Cool. We'll link up all the fun stuff in the show notes. But if you want to direct people to all the things that you're doing, I know you have. I don't know when this is going to go up, but I know you're teaching retreats at Spirit Rock, and you've got all kinds of stuff going on that people can find out about on your website, and your Instagram. But where do you want to send people?
Yeah, I have my website, hakimtafari.com. My Instagram, which is where people find, between those two, Hawkstyle. You can find me on Instagram under Hawkstyle. And my website, which will connect you to my LinkedIn, my SoundCloud. I have a SoundCloud where you can find my mixes. And then I have a radio show every Sunday, 101.5 FM. You can stream it on kqbhla.com. You can find me there. And, I do want to give a funders. There's certain individuals, obviously my daughters, but my friend Jimmy Rage and Shimon Cassette, and obviously Melinda, my partner. Those folks have really been pivotal in helping me train my mind, helping me train my body, helping me just navigate through the world. And those are some really great people. And my daughters, man, two of them are going to come and see me next week from Orlando, which I can't wait. Yeah, and you, Rich, you've always been one of my biggest supporters. And what you do for the world on a whole is really magical. And I just want to give you your flowers while I'm here, man. We really honor you. And when I say we, I mean we, because you have a community. And we really honor you and really thank you for what you do for the world. Thank you so much.
We should also thank Russell Nadal, who was the person who introduced us first, right? Yeah. So shout out to Russell. 100% he's listening to this. So we love you, Russell.
Love you, Russell.
All right,
thank you, Rich.
Until next time. Peace. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. I truly hope you enjoyed the conversation. To learn more about today's guest, including links and resources related to everything discussed today, visit the episode page at richroll.com, where you can find the entire podcast archive, my books, Finding Ultra, Voicing Change, and The Plant Power Way, as well as the Plant Power Meal Planner at meals.richroll.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, the easiest and most impactful thing you can do is to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube, and leave a review and/or comment. This show just wouldn't be possible without the help of our amazing sponsors who keep this podcast running wild and free. To check out all their amazing offers, head to richroll.com/sponsors. And sharing the show or your favorite episode with friends or on social media is, of course, awesome and very helpful. And finally, for podcast updates, special offers on books, the meal planner, and other subjects, please subscribe to our newsletter, which you can find on the footer of any page at richroll.com. Today's show was produced and engineered by Jason Camiolo. The video edition of the podcast was created by Blake Curtis with assistance by our creative director, Dan Drake. Portraits by Davey Greenberg, graphic and social media assets courtesy of Daniel Solis. And thank you, Georgia Whaley, for copywriting and website management. And of course, our theme music was created by Tyler Pyatt, Trapper Pyatt, and Harry Mathis. Appreciate the love the support. See you back here soon. Peace. Plants. Namaste.